Good morning, everyone. So in the previous session, we have discussed about EC2, a basics part, like what is parameters we have to consider while you're launching EC2 instance. Now we have seen like how to launch an instance with the basic features like AMI, instance type, key pair, and the basic networking. Means technically networking we have not modified, but we have just seen what are the parameters will be there a little bit, and then we have seen the storage volume type. That's it. With these few parameters, we will be able to launch our EC2 instance. What you do on top of that, AWS doesn't consider that those factors. Their particular thing is only to provide a infra for you. What does it mean? To create your to have your physical machines. On top of that, you'll create a virtual machines. So instead of you doing all this particular stuff, they are trying to maintain the data center, all other things and all. They are maintaining the physical machines and the virtualization tools. From this particular dashboard, I created after creating an account from this dashboard, I have selected a region and I'm trying to spin up the instance. In the background, what it does, AWS will pull this information. It will try to contact that particular specific server and it will try to create pass this information to the hypervisor, and the hypervisor will try to spin up the what kind of hypervisor they are using in the background is obviously it is a type 1 hypervisor. That is the first point that you need to remember. When we discussed about type 1 and type 2, I have told you we never use a type 2 in the real time scenarios. Okay, it is only for our personal use, like Oracle VirtualBox and VMware Workstation. Now, coming back to another point, if you remember, when I'm trying to launch an instance, I have talked about key pair. If I scroll down, here we have an option called key pair, which I've created earlier. So let us talk about this one in detail. SSH authentication. It comes under authentication. Remember, if you talk about Linux operating system or Mac operating system, we use SSH authentication, whether it is a Linux or whether it is a Mac. Because Mac is a Unix flavor. That's the reason why. Mac operating system or Linux. Then what about Windows? If you want to log into a Windows server or a Windows desktop, whatever it is, then we use RDP connection, remote desktop protocol. We can leave that, but still we call it as RDP, remote desktop protocol. Remember, in this method, we use only username password. As we all know, we prefer only, sorry, it has only username password based authentication for Windows operating systems. I would say Windows Server. Windows Server or Windows whatever it is. Server is for actual application deployment, not for our personal use. Anyways, this is a basic information. Now we want to talk about SSH. Remember, in every Linux operating system or a Mac you take into consideration, if you want to log into this particular missions, a machine which is having either Linux operating system or Mac operating system, we need to have a package installed. So what package has to be installed? Let me write here package. So it is open SSH hyphen server. For example, I'm talking about Ubuntu operating system. The package name is open SSH hyphen server package. Okay. So if you remember last time, let me go back to the virtual machine, start this. On the first day or second day, after installing operating system, we are not able to log into that machine from remote connection. Okay, I'll tell you what is remote connection again in detailed way so that you will understand. Here you can see a login prompt. So this is a direct access. This is a direct access. Let me just, here it is. Okay. This is called as a direct access. For example, this particular mission, someone wants to log in from my base operating system, nothing but Windows, or from outside. That is called as remote connection. Okay, so we can call it as remote access. For remote access, we need an IP address of that particular mission. Then only we can communicate to that particular operating system. Okay, that is a fundamental what you have to remember. When you use a direct access, just you need to have an access to that application. I can just start the mission and I can access the operating system. That is called as direct access. The one what you are seeing on the screen right now. Then what about remote access? For a remote access, we need to have a SSH package installed. For example, let us say test user. I'll maximize this again. User in my case, and the password. Once I have logged in, what does it mean? My username password was verified. I have logged in. Now, I told you should be a package installed. If it is not there, you have to install it. What is that package name? It is, let me show you because it's installed on my system, hyphen server package. This has to be installed. Open SSH hyphen server. Okay, once it got installed, then we can do SSH authentication. SSH is a protocol what we are using in order to authenticate to the Linux flavored operating systems. Okay, so to whichever system you have to log in, the Linux operating system from wherever you are on that particular target machine. So source and target, for example, let us say there is one mission. From here, you have to log into here. Let us say it is a Linux mission. And you're trying to access from Windows system. Now, over the network, you're trying to reach to this particular system with the help of IP address. So IP address is a point of contact for to reach this particular mission to access the operating system, right? That is the first thing. Now, on this particular system, if I need to allow the people to access, first of all, the package has to be installed. Which one? Open SSH-server package. Just a second. So on the target machine to which you want to access, obviously it is a Linux operating system, you need to have this package installed. Next thing, in your system, you can have any application like PuTTY, MobiXtem, or normal command prompt or PowerShell, what are the medium it is. So I'm using those kind of applications in order to do SH into this operating system. These are the 2 points, what we have done till now in detailed way to understand the concept. Any questions until here? All right. Okay. Let's go over. Next. Done. Now, let us say I want to do SH to this particular mission. So the protocol is SH protocol. I'm just calling like that. So now, so this is done and we have verified. That was also done. Now, in order to authenticate to this particular system, there are 2 methods in SSH. One is username password based authentication. One is key based authentication, which means username and password based authentication. And the second one is key based authentication. You can call it as key pair. No. Username password is straightforward. I don't need to explain this concept. Whatever you have done till now, okay, if you see a login screen, okay, in this, we are typing the username and password. If that particular username password is valid, you will be able to access the operating system. Done. Now, the second thing is for remote access. In general, we should not prefer username password based authentication. It's recommended to use only key pair based authentication. What does it mean? From whichever system you're trying to log into this particular operating system target. So from the source, you're trying to log into the target. Now, on your system, you have to generate a key pair because you're trying to access. You have to generate a key pair. From that particular key pair, which means it will give you private key and public key. Private key and public key. How to generate this key pair? There are some particular tools. So if you go back to the command prompt in your Windows operating system, not this one, sorry. The better one is go to the browser and search for git bash. Download this one. Actually, I have to mention this particular package name while I'm teaching the Git version control system. But since we fall into this particular scenario, try to install this particular package on Windows system. Okay, for Mac, Windows, Linux. So I'm talking about Windows right now. Just install it. Okay, for Mac, it is not mandated. You can ignore this one. For Linux, you can ignore because by default in Mac and Linux, it is getting installed with Git. You don't need to worry about that particular concept. But for Windows, why I'm installing this particular Git is one is for version control system. Another one is to run some Linux commands. If you want to run certain Linux commands on Windows operating system, we can use Git terminal, which means once it got installed, if you go to the search bar and type Git, you will see Git bash application. Open that. You can see it looks like this as a terminal. Similar to your command prompt and PowerShell, this is one more terminal to execute Git commands. Not only that, we can execute few Linux commands as well. That's an advantage. Now, where you are, if you look at this, you are under C drive, users, and the username as required. Now, from this user, I'm trying to generate some key pair. How to do that? It is sh-keygen. This is the command. You can execute this command on Windows as well when you have this particular terminal. Okay. In Linux operating system, obviously you can execute this command. So remember and understand that from which system you are trying to access, on that system we have to generate a key pair. Okay. In order to generate a key pair, I'm using this command. Now, what is the algorithm you are trying to prefer? If you don't pass anything, by default, it might use some algorithm like ED algorithm. Other options are there. But here, RSA algorithm is a recommended one. If you want to generate a key pair by using RSA algorithm, you have to give -t and the algorithm name. RSA, DSA, we have plenty of options. In that, the recommended one is RSA. After this, you can give enter. No other options are needed. Just enter. Now it is asking you enter the file in which to save the key pair, where it is getting saved under the user's home directory of the system. It is creating .sh directory. If it is not available, it will create. If it's already available, it is going to add this particular file. Which file it is? ID underscore RSA, because we are using RSA algorithm. This is one particular file. Okay. And give enter. In my case, I already have this particular key pair. You can see. If you really want to overwrite and generate a new one, then we have to give Y and then continue. Okay. For example, Y. And then I guess, am I using anywhere? Maybe. So I will say no in my case. Or let me override. It doesn't matter. And then it will ask you to enter a passphrase, which means for the public key, what we are trying to create, sorry, for the private key, what we are trying to create, it is going to set some password. Here, the plan is to use only passwordless authentication, right? That is the reason why we are going for key pair. So I don't want to set any password for this particular key pair. In general, some organizations will try to set some password as well. It depends upon their policy and governance. Okay, I cannot say that everybody will not use it. It is not recommended. No. In certain situations, as per the policy, they might set some password to the files as well to get it more secured. What will happen? I will tell you. If someone has stolen this particular file, they can authenticate to your system. Means to the target system, whichever you are planning to. Instead of that, if you set some password, though they have the key pair, they cannot authenticate until they know the password. It is as simple as that. Okay. For now, it is not mandated. So that's the reason why I will give enter without any passing the data. Again, enter. After that particular task is successful, here you can see there are two files. One is id underscore RSA and one is id underscore RSA.pub. The simple way to understand is this is public key and this is private key. If you want to know some more information, if I try to cat that file, I told you right here we can execute some Linux commands. Cat command under .sh directory, we have id underscore RSA, private key, open SSH, private key. Okay. And then we have id .sh, id underscore RSA.pub. This is how the public key looks. Okay. So public key and private key. This particular task was done. After this, what you need to do? You have to give the public key to the system whichever you want to log in. You cannot copy it. For example, it is a restricted one. You will give it to the administrator. Administrator will try to save that particular key in the system. Like your AWS. You have generated a key pair, but you don't have a right to, or you don't have access to store that particular key while launching the instance. AWS knows how to do that. Okay, but here we have to do it. Now I need to copy this particular public key and store it in the system. But where I have to store? First of all, you have to decide to which user you want to log in by using this key pair. First, you have to decide to which user you want to authenticate by using this key pair. Let us say, for example, it is test user on this Linux operating system. First thing is either you can create a file and you can copy paste the data. That is a normal, what do you say, um, manual method of doing it. If you want to copy the file through a command, then you have to execute. For example, I want to copy this file. I want to copy this particular file to the target system. I told you, right? We have to copy the public key, not private. From where you want to log in, you need to have the private key. To which you need to log in, there we need to have a public key. So the source will be having a private key, target will be having a public key. Sometimes this condition might get changed. It will happen in certain scenarios. Private key will get stored in the target, public key will be stored in our source. This could happen. Okay, just a point. Now, according to this scenario, we are transferring the public key and we will keep our private key. Okay. How to copy it? Okay, either we can use SCP command. That is one method. If you want to copy from one Linux system to another Linux system, we have a command called SCP, not CP. CP command is to copy the files within the system, but now it is across the systems. But since instead of using SCP command, I'm using sh-copy ID. This is part of sh package. The sh-keygen. Okay, this sh-copy-id. All these packages are, all these commands are part of that particular package. And then you have to give the port number because we are using port forwarding. And then username of the target system. And since we are using port forwarding, right, according to our scenario in this Oracle VirtualBox localhost. Same method, instead of using sh here, I'm using sh-copy ID. Then you might ask a question where you have given the key it should copy. By default, this command will go to the home directory of the current user, and then it will search for .sh directory, and under that it will search by default for id_rsa.pub. You no need to worry about that. If you need to specify, we can pass some option like -i and you can pass the details. Okay, now enter. You can see by default it has picked this particular file and it is trying to copy it. And before that, it will ask you the password for the first time. Okay, so let me give the password of that system, test123 in my scenario. Once it is done, if it is valid, number of keys added 1. It copied into that system. Now you can execute this command in order to authenticate using a key pair. It is no longer required to give the password. Okay, if you want to know where the key has been stored, now you might have a question that, okay, I tried copying this particular public key to this particular user, but where it will get stored under this user? Every user will have a home directory, as I told you before, in Linux operating system. Under that home directory, it will create .sh directory. Let me show you. 1, 2, 3. Here, let me give the password. So under this home directory, you see .sh. You can see they're on blue color. For example, .sh. Under that, we have authorized underscore keys. There is a file. If the file is not available, it's going to create it. Now, what this particular file will have, this file will have all the public key related information. Public key related information. Today, this is the system which is trying to access this this Linux operating system. Tomorrow, you might have another system, right? From where you want to do SSH. There also, you might be generating some private key and public key, and you will copy to this particular system. Okay. When you try to copy this particular public key to the system, you have existing public key of that Windows system. You might have a new public key of this Mac system. For example, let us say it is Mac operating system. Here also you have generated a private key and public key, and you have tried copying the public key to this system. Where it will get stored? Will it replace the existing public key of that Windows system? No. It should not disturb that, and it should add a new key pair. How is that possible? In this particular file, it is going to append the data. Append in the sense what? It will add the data at the bottom. For example, if you see authorized underscore keys. Tomorrow, if you add a new one, you will see one more line. That is one line actually. So in this way, all the key pairs will get added here. The public keys of the target system, source system, sorry, my bad. Public keys of the source system, which you are trying to access this one. The keys has to be stored here. Okay. After this particular task was done, what is the next? Now we can do SSH without providing any password. From that, we can confirm that your SSH configuration of key pair was done successfully. If I go back here, now if I run SSH -p2424 username at localhost. And now if I give enter, it should not prompt me for any password. You can see I have logged in without giving any password. This is what we have done yesterday in the EC2 instance. Hope now you got some picture. Yep.
So that -p is permission, but 2424
No.
is
-p is not permission. -p is nothing but port number. Port. So
Okay,
why we are passing 2424 here in this particular scenario? Because I told you, since we are not able to log into the system with 22 port number, we did a port forwarding. If you remember.
Okay.
We did a port forwarding, right? So if I need to access this particular operating system in the Oracle Virtual Box, I have to authenticate to my Windows operating system on 2424. It will get redirected to this particular 22 port number on the virtual machine. This is called as port forwarding.
Okay, got it. That's one thing.
Or else it is 22 by default. But some organizations, what they will do, they might customize the port number. Instead of using default 22 for Linux, they might be using a different port number. In those conditions, also we have to give this -p. When it is a default port number 22, no need to pass -p. When it is a non-default port number, we have to pass -p. It is as simple as it.
Correct.
Any other questions? No? Okay. So now we understood, right, what AWS is doing in the backend for SSH communication to your Linux operating system. I think now it is much better.
Yes.
Yep. Okay, now let's go to the next one. As I said before, if you delete your instance, which is nothing but terminate, you cannot recover the instance. It's not possible. Okay, that's one thing you have to remember. Let me launch instance once again, almost with the same parameters. Here I want to use Ubuntu by default 24. Let it be like that. 1 core CPU, 1 GB RAM is sufficient. Key pair, the one which I've created yesterday. You can see by default it is RSA, which I've selected. Network, I told you, right, how we are able to authenticate, means how we are able to send the traffic on 22 port number on this particular EC2 instance, because by default it is allowing you SSH traffic. SSH traffic is nothing but 22 port number from anywhere. It's by default. That's the reason why we are able to access our EC2 instance without any errors. Or else, for example, it is creating a new security group. It is nothing but a firewall. We'll talk about that in detail later sessions in the VPC concept. For now, you just need to follow this particular step as it is. Do not change anything here until I talk about it. Okay, scroll down. Here I talked about this particular volume, the root volume which I've talked about, where the operating system will get stored. According to our free trial version, we can use up to maximum 30 under SSD general or magnetic storage. Let me try to give some 15 GB. And other parameters are not necessary for now. We can discuss them later. And now let me try to launch instance, which is in progress. And if I refresh this page, you can see the instance is in running status. You can see within seconds, the instance was launched and your instance is running right now. Now I can access the operating system, which is much faster. Why? Because it is a pre-installed operating system, ready to use. Only just you are passing the parameters or by using which you want to launch your virtual machine. Okay. Coming back to the actual point. Now here we can see the IP address, all these details and all, which I've talked about this point yesterday itself. Now look at this public IP and private IP. As I told you, this private IP address, it will get assigned from the AWS VPC network. Internally, AWS will have its own networking. That is nothing but VPC, Virtual Private Cloud, which will allocate this IP address. But if I need to access from outside, from any geographical location, or from outside of this particular network, what is used by this instance, we need to have a public IP. Okay, for time being, understand only this concept. Okay, that's where we are using this public IP address in order to authenticate to your operating system. Done. Now, let us see what happens if I stop the instance. From here itself, okay, you no need to log in and stop this particular instance. From this particular dashboard itself, you can stop the instance and you can reboot the instance as well. We can control from here. Start instance is not visible. Why? Because it's already in running status. You can't run it again, right? That is the reason why it is grayed out. Let me stop the instance. You can see it is saying stopping the instance. Associated resources, which will get affected. Nothing but volume. You can see the instance is getting stopped. Finally, we have to see the status as stopped, not stopping, which is in progress.
Why do we need to restart this, reboot the instance, Sudhams?
Sorry?
Why do we reboot the instance? In
If
which
you
case?
want to, see, there are certain conditions where I told you, right? Sometimes you might have upgraded the kernel. In order to activate the kernel with the latest version, I told you in those conditions, you have to reboot the instance. That is one of the example.
Mhm.
Till it is getting stopped. Is it your question answered or?
Yeah, that is answered. And one more thing, once we stop the instance, can we change the, any
Parameters?
parameters? Yes.
Yes, we can. We can. That is what
And
I
we
want to
can change
discuss
the
now.
parameters and then start the instance.
Yes. See, I'll tell you one scenario. For example, initially we thought that 1 core CPU, 1 GB RAM is sufficient. After a few days or few months, we realized that this is not sufficient. Manually, I'm talking about for now, not automation. So then our organization realized that this resource is not sufficient. We want to increase it. Then what you are supposed to do? On a running instance, we cannot do that. First, you have to stop the instance. For example, if I want to change this particular T2 micro, it is 1 core CPU, 1 GB RAM. I want to change it. Then what you are supposed to do? Go to actions. Here we can see instance settings. Under that, we can see change instance type. Where is that? Yeah, here it is. Select that option. Here we can change it. For example, only for testing purpose, I'm doing that. You guys can ignore it. For example, I will try to use T2 small. What does it mean? You'll get 1 core CPU and 2 GB RAM. You can see here. Now the instance type comparison, you can see earlier you're using T2 micro. Now we are planning to use T2 small. You can see the pricing difference as well.
Okay.
And you can see the differences with the changes what you're trying to do. If you are okay to this, then we can apply.
Okay.
This is a new thing what AWS added.
Okay.
Earlier, we don't have this particular page to compare this one. We used to just modify and we used to say change. Now it is a good thing that they are showing us the differences with the change what we are trying to do. For example, I will change it. Free eligible, you can see this is true and this is false. What does it mean? It is a paid one. Now change. Yeah. Once it got changed, if you want a confirmation, you can just check here. T2 small, or you can check here as well. After this activity, let us say I did my changes, whatever I want. My job is done. Again, you have to start. And one more thing that you have to understand is when you shut down your instance, nothing but stop. The public IP address will get removed. The AWS has removed the public IP address which is assigned to this particular instance. Okay, because it is a dynamic allocation, it is not a fixed one. Now, again, if I start the instance, a new public IP address will be assigned, not the same one. For example, I have logged into my instance, I have not logged in, right? Okay, you can ignore. Now, a new public IP address will get assigned, not the same one. Let us see. Instance state, start instance. Because now it got stopped. Start instance. It's getting started right now. Initially, it will be in pending status. After that, you will see running status. You can see now the instance is in running status. And the IP address got changed. If you remember earlier, it is 5 series. Now it is 4 series. 44.204.169.38. Like that. Okay. I just want to show you these 2 points. You can change the parameters, few of them. And you can change this IP address also will get changed because you stopped and started. For example, if you reboot the instance, does anyone know what is the basic difference between stop and start and reboot? Or you can say restart, whatever it is. Reboot. Any difference that you already know, or you can ignore it.
Stop and start and simply just stopping the instance and just restarting. The IP address will not change, right?
Okay.
Stop means the all process will come to stop and again start again.
Okay.
The
Any
process
other
will be
answers?
Stop will free the resources and start again. It will require some.
Simple. In reboot, automatically it will get started. You don't need to start it manually. In a reboot, it will shut down and again it will get started automatically. Whereas in stop, it will not get started until you trigger the start. It is as simple as it. Technically speaking, with the functionality wise. Other points, what you have told as valid. The IP address will not get changed. Okay. So that's what happens in the backend. So let me try to reboot instance and say reboot. That's it.
What is 44.204?
What?
I just want to see that IP address. Like, I mean, if it's after reboot,
This is the IP address. You can just see it, right? 44.204. Just remember these two. Here, the only thing what I have not seen from AWS side is when it is getting rebooted, it will always show you running status. But technically in the backend, it is getting restarted.
Can you refresh one second?
I think by now it's up and running. Because we can't see uptime here, you have to log in and see the uptime. There it will let you know when from how long your system is running.
But you rebooted right now, but I don't see
Yes.
that. It's not
IP address will not get changed. It will be the same IP address. For example, if I go to command prompt, Downloads. Under the downloads, we have demo file, right? Demo key. Pem, Ubuntu. If you remember, last time we have changed the PEM key format to PPK. If you remember.
Mm.
Yes. I have logged in. What does it mean? Your system is up and running. And if you see the uptime, it is just few seconds. Means now it is minute. From how long your system is running? From past 1 minute. This is a confirmation, right? Your system got rebooted or not. From how long it is running.
But IP address is not changed. That's what I'm just wondering.
No, the IP address will never get changed in the reboot. And remember, the private IP address, in whatever the condition it is, it will never get changed. Whether you reboot, whether you stop and start, or whether you stop the instance. Only when you terminate the instance, the IP address will get removed. Private IP address. What about public IP? Right now, this is a dynamic public IP address, not static. Static in the sense what? Fixed one.
Fixed one.
Now this is a dynamic. Dynamic in the sense this IP address is not constant for this particular instance. If you stop the instance, okay, automatically this IP address will get removed. That there is an advantage. No additional cost will be applied for the IP address what is allocated to you. When the instance is in running status, for this also the charges will be applied. Okay, all these are like hidden charges. Now, when you stop the instance, IP address will get removed. So no charges will be applied. And one more point is, if you stop your instance, charges will not be applied. Billing cycle will not be enabled for a stopped instance. Only for the running instance, AWS will apply the billing. Okay. It is from minute to minute. Earlier, it is a round value. Means if you run for 1 hour, 2 minutes, the billing used to be applied for 2 hours. 1 hour, 2 minutes, right? If you run your instance for 1 hour, 2 minutes, the billing will be used to be applied for 2 hours. Now the billing cycle, they have changed it. The billing is applied for every minute, not seconds. Actually, it is impossible. Every minute. What does it mean? If you run your instance for only 25 minutes, the billing will be applied only for 25 minutes, not for 1 hour. That is an advantage for customers, right? For us, the end users. So that has been a rapid change, what to say, a major change that AWS has done in the recent time. Not recent times, actually. It has been 5 years, 5 or 6 years. Okay. Now, another point. If you're okay to this, I'll go to the next point.
One question I have, okay.
Yep.
IP address, okay. So I have noticed one thing here is, for example, right now your system is right now holding to the 44.204.169
Yes,
subnet.
this is the IP address.
But when we're doing the whitelisting, okay, for this, for example, like if we have this is in cloud, okay, when we do like on-premise whitelisting, when we monthly or like I think 2 months once, the IP address will be changing. We need to add like some more address. We used to add it, okay.
Where?
Like for example, if you're using the data power or using in like API, okay, layer 7, okay, so you have connectivity. From the local landscape to the sense like data center to cloud, right? So the firewalls, everything need to be open with the domain base or the IP based.
That is a domain based.
Yeah,
is it they're opening the firewall in the domain based or in the IP based?
No, when you say domain based, we have to have only AWS, Amazon, AWS.com only. But behind the scenes, IPs, we can't go with a single name, right? So
Yes.
we go to the IP address, like for example, subnet, okay, like 44.2.0.169.0.32 or 16 class IP address, we'll mention it. Sometimes, like, I have seen like monthly once or twice, monthly once or 2 months once, okay, the IP address will be like flipping.
See, if you are, okay, there are certain scenarios why they change it. One is to protect your network. Okay, they want to, on an interval basis, they want to change it. because they don't want to keep that particular IP address as a constant one to protect from cyber attacks. Okay, that is one thing as part of security. And moreover, if you are using domain based, even though the IP address is getting changed in the firewall, you don't need to do any modifications. That is one thing. If you are controlling your firewall based on IP address, obviously, whenever the IP address is getting changed, you have to update your firewall as well. That is an ongoing process.
Okay, during the time I have noticed that the server IPs also will be changing. Okay, that's what you said.
It depends. See, why they are changing it depends upon the requirement. Okay. Even though the IP address is getting changed, there is a record that is added to that particular domain. If you know about A records and all, DNS records, those records will get added. That's where it will get pointed. You don't need to worry about the firewall because your domain is already added into the firewall. It doesn't care about the IP address.
Okay.
If your firewall is controlled by using IP address, obviously you have to update whenever you're modifying the IP address. Why your organization is changing the IP address? As part of security best practices. That's it. They don't want to keep that IP address as fixed one for long running resources.
Okay. Got it. Yeah, thanks.
Yep. Any other questions, please?
No, good.
Okay. Now let's see one more thing. See, this particular instance can communicate to the network, means outside google.com, for example. It's able to communicate, obviously. So from outside, the traffic is allowed to the instance. From the instance, the traffic is allowed outside. How it is getting traveled, we can discuss that in the networking part, VPC. For now, it will be a vast syllabus or you will not understand it all. Okay. Now, the next thing which I want to explain is, for example, you lost the private key. So did you found any answer for it? If you lost the private key, how will you handle the access to this particular instance? For example, I will remove it. Okay. Intentionally, I'm trying to remove what do you say? The key. What happened? No such file or directory. Where I am? Okay. Oh, it is in downloads. Okay. Let's say I deleted. Now, if I try to access, it will not work. No such file or directory. Obviously, permission denied. So what you will do? Let us say you don't have a backup. You forgot to store it. Meanwhile, this was happened. How will you act into this particular scenario? First and foremost thing is nothing but if your instance is having a public IP address and in the firewall, if the traffic is allowed from anywhere or from the specific location from where you want access, then you can go to the connect. Here we can see this is called as browser based access. Okay. So you can see instance connect. This is what you have to select. And then let us say connect. It is opening a terminal in the browser. You can say I'm able to access. Now you can do one thing. My system already has a private key and public key, right? Private key and public key. So what I can do is I can copy my public key, id underscore rsa.pub. I'll copy this public key and I will update in this instance. How VI, not VI. Since you don't know about that, let us try to use Nano. That is a tool to open a file as an editor, like Notepad, Notepad++, similar to it. Under .sh, you have authorized underscore keys. I don't want to disturb the existing one. Try to add a new one. It's added. Control X, capital Y, and then enter. Now the changes have been saved. If I want, I can just cat the output of the file. The line was added. You can see second line. Now, can I do SSH? Let us say administrator has solved the issue, what I'm facing right now. Now, can I do SSH or not?
On the fly, we can't. I think on the fly we can't change these keys, right? So
Yes.
only once you stop the instance, then only it will take. I think.
Okay. Any other answers?
You copied it.
You can log in.
Will it work or not? Simple.
Will work.
It will work. Why? Because my public key was stored. I should be able to authenticate, which I'm. It doesn't mean that you need to have only AWS generated a key pair. No. In this particular conditions also, we can generate our own key pair in our local system. The only thing is that particular public key has to be stored in this EC2 instance. That's what I have done as administrator. Now the user was able to authenticate. Resolved, right? This is one approach. Okay. So any questions until this particular session? The task what we have done. Any confusion part in this?
So basically, you're trying to connect to the console and right?
Yes. This is
Okay.
called as browser-based console. But the problem with this action is you have to first log in to the AWS management console. Then you have to go to the EC2 instance page, select the instance, and then you have to connect. If you don't have permissions, you can't even use this option.
Yeah.
If all these conditions are met, then only we can perform this task of adding the public key to this instance. Simple thing. Since the public key got what is a private key got lost, I just added my public key to this particular instance so that I can use my private key to authenticate to this particular EC2 instance. That's what I've done. Is that clear? Or any confusion part in this?
What is the other method? Like you was referring. Is the one.
Another method you guys have to find out. For example, let us say there is no public key. That is your task for today. There is no public key. You have only private key. Sorry. There is no public IP address. You have only private IP. Sorry. There is no public IP address. You have only private IP address. In those conditions, we can't use this option. It needs a public IP address. In that particular situation, what you're supposed to do? You can search anywhere. I don't have any restrictions on that. Finally, I want a solution. Okay. If your instance doesn't have a public IP address and you lost your key pair, how will you resolve that? In order to do SSH into that instance. That's a question. Listen to the video and try to search. Practically, if it is possible, if you have a time, do it. Or else you can just explain me orally in the classroom. Let me stop this instance. You can see if I want to change the instance type, when the instance is in running status, I can't do that. The action is available when the instance is stopped. This one as well, CPU options, all these options which are grayed out. This needs a instance to be stopped. Okay.
So instance key pair is deleted and need to connect through private IP, right? That's what the
Simple. The AWS key pair has been lost on my system. What I've done, my key pairs have been added to this particular system. That's it.
Yeah.
Okay. For example, I don't want people to allow and delete this particular instance. I want to protect this instance from deletion. In those conditions, you have to go to actions. And here we can see instance settings. Under that, we can see, okay, change termination protection. Let me try to enable that. I'm an administrator right now. You can say root access. When I try to delete this instance, what will happen? Let us see. What it is trying to say? It got failed. Failed to terminate this instance. Why? Because this instance may not be terminated. Modify the disable API termination instance attribute and try again. What does it mean? This instance is right now protected from deletion, or we can say termination. So that is the reason why if you want to protect like this for production environments, let us say you have production environment, after they have been spinned up, I want to add a tag, enable this option so that the instance will not get terminated even if you try to do it forcefully. Okay, this is one of the security best practices. What we can do it on the EC2 instance. Again, if I need to terminate, you have to go to actions, change termination protection to disable. Now we can delete the instance. That's it. Now it's getting deleted. Okay. So this is all for today, guys. If you have any questions, you can just ask me now, or else we can wind up the session.